And before this video begins, I would just like to tell you that I have a PO box until early December. So if you want to send me any fan mail or jokey things for me to open in Patreon videos, or if I get enough in an actual video on the main channel, just send it to this address, and yeah, just thought I'd let you know. Anyway, on with the video. With any show as big and full of possibilities as Doctor Who, there are bound to be endless streams of fan theories attempting to answer plot holes, outsmart the writers, or simply have a bit of fun. I've previously talked about two very different theories and attempted to put them down to suck the fun out of them because I'm an evil, cynical man determined to make your life miserable. But today we have something very different on our hands, a theory nobody in their right minds could ever possibly believe without a hint of irony. It's a concept that has been kicking around for over a decade by this point, and it's hands down one of the most ridiculous theories ever made. Yes, we're talking about Rory is the Master. And no, you don't have to check the upload date to see if this is some kind of April Fool's joke. That is actually a legitimate theory, and you'd be surprised as to how well known it is, for better or for worse. But this video won't just be ripping into some goofy theory. Rory is the Master is actually indicative of a much wider trend in the Doctor Who fanbase, so by deconstructing it and analysing it, we can actually see how it spearheads an entire social movement and a never-ending plague cursing Doctor Who from now until the end of time. So if that sounds interesting to you, and well, I hope it does, make sure to strap in tight because it's time to delve into the rabbit hole of everyone is the Master. So naturally, let's start with Rory, the bumbling and awkward yet well-meaning partner of the 11th Doctor companion Amy Pond. Rory was introduced from the very beginning of Series 5 and went on to make frequent appearances, becoming an official fully fledged companion during Series 6. But during these two series he managed to develop a bit of a reputation for dying. A lot. Pretty much every week he'd trip over a nail and fall through a window, only to return in the next episode completely unscathed. He really was the Kenny of the Doctor Who universe. Showrunner Stephen Moffat has never really stated just why he enjoyed constantly killing the character off, but it was initially used as a good tool within Amy's character development of growing to appreciate Rory and embracing her love for him. But these constant deaths are where we must begin our tale of him actually secretly being the Doctor's oldest friend and enemy, a multiple thousand-year-old Time Lord from a completely different planet. So where do these two things apparently link? Well, the Master died a lot and always came back too. Yeah, that's one of the big examples of Rory being the Master. It's even funnier when you read further into this detail and see people pointing out that he returned from his holiday in Crackland as an Auton controlled by the Nesting Consciousness, who, as it turns out, were the villains of the Master's first appearance in the show. Because that definitely proves Rory is actually the Master, rather than it, just being a convenient storytelling device to resurrect a character erased from time, and explains how he can guard a big stone for 2,000 years without aging. Nah, it's definitely Moffat trying to hint at something instead. Another groundbreaking smoking gun proving once and for all that Rory is a villainous Time Lord is apparently his lack of a reaction to the TARDIS in The Vampires of Venice. Indeed, when the Doctor brings him on board, Rory foregoes the usual shock and awe, bigger on the inside reaction, and instead just shrugs it off because he's been doing a bit of reading about other dimensions. Of course, it's perfectly plausible that after your girlfriend's childhood imaginary friend came to life and battled a shape-shifting alien creature and giant eyeball spaceships in front of you, you'd pop down to the local library's WTF just happened to me section and do a bit of light reading. But where's the fun in that? It's obviously another clear-cut example of Rory's secret identity as a Time Lord leaking out because he's actually well versed in Time Lord science, and it definitely couldn't just be a fun joke showing how angry Rory is that the Doctor kissed his fiancée and told everyone at his stag do all about it. Now that would just be silly, wouldn't it? But even if we do entertain the ludicrous idea that Rory is actually the Master, how come neither he nor the Doctor seem to ever even slightly acknowledge the possibility? Well, the convenient answer to this comes in everyone's favourite plot device. A chameleon arch. Yes, ever since 1995's Human Nature, fans have gleefully pulled out chameleon arches to explain why anyone can be someone important, because it's a device that rewrites Time Lord biology and allows them to hide at the cost of their memories. So naturally, this is apparently what happened to Rory too at some point before his introduction in Series 5. And never mind the fact Amy knew him as a child. That's not important, because if you look carefully at one little production mess up in the corner of the screen, you will see that Rory's badge says 1990, which clearly means that he's not who he says he is, or something. Therefore, Rory simply doesn't know he's actually a Time Lord, and believers of the theory suggest the Power of 3 actually reveals his fob watch, because fob watches aren't common items in 2012, so the only discernible solution is that it's an alien artifact, rather than a family heirloom or random antique. No, that's just what the Illumosity want you to think. I know how negative this portion of the video is, but it's important to be blunt about how tenuous all these examples are. They're so flimsy as ways to prove a theory. Probably the most plausible part of the whole Rory is the Master concept is River being half Time Lord. Rather than Moffat's explanation of Melody being conceived in the TARDIS in the Time Vortex and raised as a Time Lord, some fans believe that her Time Lord DNA actually comes from her biological father Rory. If it wasn't for how circumstantial all the other evidence is, I could actually somewhat get behind this aspect, because it seems the most convincing, explaining why River is just magically part Time Lord instead of all the weird time vortex excuses. But this is then ruined and any last remaining shred of the theory's integrity is ripped away with the most amazing evidence of them all, Rory complaining about a bit of a headache and Let's Kill Hitler. Yes, in an astonishing feat of lacking self-awareness, the most referenced example of proof comes as Rory asks why there's a banging in his head just moments after seeing Melody regenerate into River. Of course, we did see in Utopia that certain phrases and objects can trigger the buried memories of a Time Lord. But honestly, the scene is just a simple joke about how ludicrous it is that they locked Hitler of all people inside a random cupboard like he's an irritating child. The relation to the John Sim Master's never-ending drumbeat is just a coincidence, nothing more. So it's laughable that this is always seen as the biggest piece of proof there is. But okay, now that we've had our fun and I've got the bullying out of my system, it's time to ask the question, why are these theories so popular? After all, it's not just Rory who is apparently the Master. Fans are constantly speculating on the true identities of characters in Doctor Who, thinking anyone is a twist away from being the Master, or the Rani, or Romana, or even the Doctor themselves. It's been a constant part of the show, and as much as I hate to say it, there's a good reason for it. Because these twists do happen all the time. Granted, it's not common enough to even believe Rory was ever capable of being the Master in disguise, but the evil Time Lord has always had a reputation for hiding in plain sight, constantly showing up like a Saturday morning cartoon, wearing a moustache and going completely unrecognised, only to then rip it off and everyone going, "Oh my god, it's the Master, where did he come from?" Fans have pretty much been conditioned to trust no one and think everyone is someone different to who they say. Just look at Yana and Missy, for example, times where this kind of wild speculation was actually proven right. And you even get the reveal of the fugitive Doctor being chameleon-arched. So as a fan, you're kind of trained to connect these completely random dots, because maybe, just maybe, you'll be right this time that Yaz Khan is actually the Rani because she blinked twice during the reveal of O being the Master. Survivorship bias is the logical error of focusing on the small pool of successes and completely overlooking the much larger pool of failures, therefore drawing a misguided conclusion as a result. This is exactly why these kinds of theories are so prevalent. Fans get so consumed with the correct calls of characters like Mel's or Ruth not being who they seem, that as theorists, they completely forget the countless failures like Rory being the Master or Kosh Sharmas being the Doctor. Fans tend to overlook their horrendous record at predicting twists because they fire out like a shotgun, trying to cover as much square footage as possible in the hopes of one day being right. It all stems from that desperation to outsmart the showrunner and see a twist coming, no matter how outlandish the journey is. Fans had grown so used to surprise character reveals, especially during the Moffat era, so they naturally began to see patterns within Rory that weren't actually there. No matter how small something is, Doctor Who fans have a craving to read too much into it. Like Dan Lewis making a joke about having a friend with a more impressive TARDIS than the Doctor's, which people took to mean either he was a Time Lord or he was friends with the Master or something. And then there's the wild yet incredibly short-lived fan theories, like Claire being a Clara Echo because they have a similar name and kind of vaguely look like each other. So in the grand scheme of things, the Rory is the Master theory isn't even all that outlandish anymore. It's just the most prominent example of a persistent trend. The Doctor Who universe has so many iconic characters fans love and want to see back, so these theories are almost like wish fulfillment in a way. People cling to the hope that Susan might one day come back in a different regeneration, meaning any remotely whimsical female character should immediately be labelled as a Susan candidate. I'm in two minds about this rampant speculation and constant guessing games. Of course, it's fun to overanalyze a character in the slim chance that they're actually someone significant, but I also think it detracts from the viewing experience, because you'll always end up with fans complaining that their fantasy scenario didn't come true. They'll create this elaborate theory based on tiny scraps of information only for it to come nothing and they think they've been cheated, even though their supposed master plan was never on the cards to begin with. And there's also the fact that having everyone be someone else makes the Doctor Who universe dramatically smaller. It reminds me of how Star Wars is always going back to Tatooine with the same characters constantly showing up because that's just what some casual fans are begging for. I don't want to see a never-ending rotation of the Master, the Rani, Omega or the Monk, each jumping out of the bushes every 5 seconds in a surprise return, because that gets very old very quick. It's tiring even seeing fans create these theories, because it almost shows a lack of imagination. Claiming everyone is a secret Time Lord is such an uninspired route to take that it has become an inside joke within the fanbase. That's how widespread this issue is. It's so bland and overdone, because if you can claim that Rory is the Master, then you can surely find evidence for literally any other character past or present being the Master too. These theories are like fast food. There's no craft to them. It's short-term dopamine churned out with no real value. Amy and Rory having a fob watch on a table in their bedroom is not a basis for an entire fan theory, nor is Rory having a headache. Usually I wouldn't care, but sometimes these theories end up bordering on misinformation, leading people to believe it was some kind of purposeful storyline that never got paid off. But it wasn't. There was never anything there to begin with. It was all in your head. Wake up, Richard. Please, the crash was 5 years ago. We all miss you. As you probably have worked out by now, I have a very complicated relationship with fan theories. Although according to Screen Rant, that's what my entire channel is about. Weird. Fan theories can be very fun and interactive projects in the Doctor Who community, especially if it's one people are just kind of messing around with for a laugh. But there is a time where it becomes excessive, with people almost becoming obsessed with their own reaches of logic and trying to force it into reality when there was no foundation for it to begin with. It's like growing up and creating a Brain of Morbius fanfiction, and then combining it with the Cartmel master plan and forcing that on everyone watching the show. Wait, hang on a minute. Yeah, so basically all the attempts to try and predict twists and manifest them into existence will eventually turn you into Chris Chibnall, which kind of says all you need to know. Instead, be like good old Kenneth over here. Kenneth knows what he's doing. His fan theory doesn't cut any corners. It's fascinating, and I'll probably do a video about it at some point, but you can actually go and look at Davis's one about it. I'm sorry if this video seemed overly ranty and negative, because I really didn't mean it to be. I just wanted to explore a frustrating fan theory trend in the fanbase, but there's no way to really talk about it without ripping into it really. But are there any other fan theories you'd like me to talk about and break down, hopefully in a much less negative way? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. And a special thank you to my Platinum level patron, Maximilian Foreman, and all my Gold level patrons, Calvin, Daniel Shillito, Franzorn AK Line Vortex, Gog Nogler, Herna Verzog, and Luke_SY. Thank you so much for your support.